Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Peace, and on this channel we talk about everything product marketing. Today we're going to talk about hard skills that every product marketing person must have. And before I dive into these hard skills, I just want to say that skills for product marketing can definitely be learned. So while you're listening to these skills, what should be going through your mind should be, how can I convert some of the hard skills that I already have and make it into a product marketing hard skill, right? So some of them I will tell you how they relate to some of the skills that you may potentially have, because product marketing is a very broad field and people transition into product marketing from many broad fields. So I may not be able to cover all the skills that you do have, but I will just try my best to make it as easy for you to say, okay, I have this skill and this is how I can convert it into a product marketing skill. All right, so let's get started. The first one that I will talk about is product launches, because that's the first thing people like. When you say product marketing, people say, oh, product marketing helps take the product to the market. So that's the first skill I'll cover. And for product launches, what happens with this skill is a mix of strategic, creative, and tactical. So strategic meaning that you have to be able to create a plan that can launch a product in a successful way. So that's the first step. You need to be able to sit down, analyze your product, put together all the research you've had from your customers, review the data from your competitive intelligence, like who your competitors are, what's the market telling you, what are the sensitivities, what are the potential blockers you would experience, what are the things that you could do that would make that product successful when you launch it. So this is like all that strategic thoughts. How can you package your position in your messaging? How can you tell your story? All that strategic thoughts is the skill you need to have. Now, if you're very creative, meaning you can come up with copies, you can come up with great campaign, like great advertisements, but you have no idea how to package this in a document, in a well thought out plan. And a well thought out plan usually is your go to market plan, where you're looking at where you have to have things like, oh, this really nice strategy that you've put together, the budget that you have to launch this product, does it tally with the budget you have, the goal that you have for that product launch? Does this your strategy document tally with that? Because if you have a goal of generating $5 million in revenue, $500 million in revenue, and the plan that you have, if you look at it, it can only generate $2 million. You see that you have a problem, because you've not put together a good enough plan. Also, the same vein, if you have a plan of acquiring 100,000 new customers, and your plan cannot acquire these customers because your plan is focused on radio advertisements, that's also a problem. If your plan is supposed to do something within a certain time frame and it cannot do it within that certain time frame, that's also a problem. So yes, a strategic document, that strategic part of product launches would require deep thinking, very detailed understanding of what you need to launch that product to the market successfully. And then when you come to the tactical side, this is all when it comes to execution. What are the tactics? What are the specific tactics you have to do to actually launch? For example, oh, you need to post a video. When do you need to post that video? When do you need to post your launch video? When do you need to post an influencer video? When do you need to start a paid campaign? When do you need to reach out to a community? On what date would you do XYZ? On what date does your website need to go live? So all of those things, those are tactical things you have to think of. For the creative side of product launches, this comes to the advert itself. Like, how are you going to grab attention? Because in this market, everybody is competing for your customers' attention, and you have to be able to grab it if you want to achieve your goal. And so yes, for you to do product launches well, you have to have a mix of strategic, creative, and tactical ability. And this can be learned, of course. It can also be developed from lots and lots and lots of practice. And product launches typically covers many of the other skills, because you're going to utilize many of the product marketing skills that I will still talk about here in actually launching a product. But don't worry, because from wherever you are, if you currently work in sales, you're working in growth marketing, brand marketing, content marketing, whatever you do now, as long as you're able to do it with detail, as long as you've been able to plan something in the past and do it well, you can definitely take that and put it into a skill of product launches. Then the second one I'll talk about would be positioning and messaging. Because when you're thinking of product product launching, you have to also think of positioning and messaging. And it's a big part of what product marketers do. And what this entails is pretty much how can you package your product? How can you communicate this package to a customer? So when you go out there with your product, you're going to need to tell people something. You can't just tell them anything. You also have to be able to compete. You can't be doing exactly the same thing with your competitor. You can't copy your competitor. You can't seem to be doing something that's like people did way back in the 90s. So how are you selling your story for people to say, oh, this product resonates with me more. I want to try this product out. Let me give it a shot. So and this is what happens with your positioning. What is that thing about your product that makes it stand out? That skill of understanding the product well enough to say, okay, based on what we have versus what customers want, this is the part that makes us stand out. It could be speed of delivery, it could be great customer service, it could be some great innovative thing that you have, a great innovative feature that you have. It could be ease, like, oh, the product is the easiest way to do a particular thing that customers really want to do. Then that's how you find what your positioning would be like. Also, you have to think about what kind of positioning can help you compete in the market. So thinking about what makes sense for your customer is one thing. Then what about your competitors? You have to think about how to compete, because if you're saying your product is the easiest way a consumer can do something, then that means you're trying to compete on ease, and you have to make sure that your competitors cannot catch up with you, at least for a long time. Because if you're saying, oh, we are the easiest, and someone else, a competitor, is the easiest, then that positioning is just not right. It's the same way if you're saying you have a groundbreaking feature that can do this and do that, but everybody has this groundbreaking feature, that your product cannot compete, right? Because every other product has it. So it will not make sense for a customer to maybe switch from that product to yours, or they won't know how to make a decision to use your product because your value proposition is not strong enough. So you have to have a strong value that can help you compete with your competitors, so that while they're saying, oh, we are the fastest way to do stuff, you're saying, oh, we are the easiest way to do stuff. And then someone else can be saying our feature is the features that we have is our features is just the most innovative, and it can do more things than every other person, right? So you have to find a way to compete. And then when it comes to messaging, you have to be able to communicate this nice positioning that you've put together when you've understood, oh, in terms of customers, what do they need? Like, what do they need? It cannot be something they just want. What do they really need that can give you an edge, that can make them attracted to your product, versus what else, where can we compete in the market? So when you've matched that together, the next thing you can think of in the positioning and messaging mix is, how can you message this? How can you communicate this to your target customers, right? And the way to do it is the way that I would do it is to speak the language the customer speaks, which is it's supposed to be a no-brainer. But I've noticed sometimes that a lot of product marketers or a lot of people in marketing try to get too clever with this part. Like, they try to get too clever with their messaging. But messaging is supposed to be clear. It's supposed to be understood. It's supposed to be obvious. Is if people have to think too hard, have to wonder if you meant this or you meant that, then you're not doing messaging right. So your messaging has to be clear. And this is it's the message that you have. It has to be clear. It has to be consistent, and people have to know. It has to be obvious. So the messaging that your website conveys, your landing page, it has to be obvious that you're saying, oh, our product is the easiest way to do it. If your ads are going out there, your ads has to be consistent with that message of ease, since that's the position that you're using to go. Your interviews that you're doing online, the way your press release, like everything that you're doing around that campaign has to flow the same way, because your message has to be consistent. If you go one place and you say we are the easiest way of doing something, then you go somewhere else and say we are AI powered, and you go somewhere else and you say we are the fastest way to do something, people are going to be confused. Are you fast, or are you easy, or are you AI powered, or are you what? Like, so you have to be able to communicate that very clearly, like what you do. You also have to be able to package that in a way that's consistent so that across all of your channels, people are not confused what you do. Speak the language of your customers. Don't don't message your products in a way that people can't understand. Don't go too technical. Don't say jargonish things that people can relate with. And messaging is not copywriting. Just wanted to highlight that before, because I see that is it's confusing. I understand. And what the difference about messaging is just messaging is meant to be clear and obvious and consistent. Copywriting, on the other hand, can be sometimes it's not always clear, right? Like I'd always say, got milk. That campaign is not super clear if you just hear got milk in abstract, but in by the time you review the entire messaging and packaging of the campaign, you're able to get that copyright. So copywriting can be clever. Copywriting can also be different. Sometimes you want to say something else, you can change your copywriting, you can also change your messaging, but in general, your messaging has to be clear and consistent, especially when you're doing, like when you're trying to launch a product. It's not the time to say, oh, let's test this and try this. As long as you're right there, you're at the point where you're in the market, you're launching a product, you have to stay consistent to that messaging. Unless you haven't tested enough and then you notice that messaging is not working, then at that point, yeah, I would definitely advise you to try something else. But I hope you get it. Then the other skill that I'm going to talk about that product marketing should have is storytelling, which is also very close to messaging and positioning. But for storytelling, it's different in a way that storytelling is it's like an entire thing where you need to be able to connect so many dots. You need to be able to connect the dots between this positioning that you have, your messaging, your product, your features. You have to connect, including like maybe your product founders, if you want to go that route, your team, your brand. You want to be able to connect all these dots in a nice story so that when you go out there and you're promoting this product and you're saying this is why we are better than everybody, people can also resonate with the story behind the product. People can also feel like they want to be a part of that story. It's kind of like with Apple's Think Different campaign and Coca-Cola's Share Coke campaign. That was not just a campaign, it was an entire story, sharing a Coke, having names attached to Coke labels and stuff like that. That's an entire story. That's not just an advert, that's not just one thing, right? So for you to be able to do really well, you should be able to connect dots in such a way that you can deliver a story that connects people emotionally. It's not just creative, exciting, it's not just there to sell something, but it should be able to connect your audiences, and that's what would ultimately help you drive customer engagement, which is a big metric for product marketing. And the next skill is sales enablement. So for sales enablement, it's for product-led companies, companies where the product does all the job, there's no sales teams, you're not going to need the skill as much because the product does all the job. So the product, a customer can onboard themselves on the product, use the product, they can literally go through an entire life cycle without ever needing to interface with sales. Then the skill, you don't really need it. But if you're going to work in a business environments for a SaaS product or something like that, where your customers at some point have to interface with sales, they have to do a demo of some kind, they just need sales at some point, then sales enablement is a skill that you will need. And what happens here is, for some companies, you're either working to help the sales team close deals, you're helping them with sales materials, pitch decks, training the team, just teaching them who the competitors are. And then in other companies, the sales enablement function works more around you being in the sales team, you being a big part of that. I know it's very rare, but I've seen it happen where some of these companies, product marketing does kind of sits very closely with sales. You're a big part of like those conversations, but I don't think it's like you would see that generally. I'm just telling you so you can have an open mind with sales enablement. But generally, your function in sales enablement would require you to understand how deals are won, like understand why a deal did not close versus why a deal closed. And this is usually from interviewing people, from sitting down in sales conversations, from being part of that flow from the beginning to the end. It will start helping you, it will help you understand, oh, we spoke to this kind of person and they didn't, and this deal didn't close. But when we spoke to this other kind of person, the deal closed, right? So understanding this will help you help the sales team so that deals can close faster, because it will teach you um, different types of people and what to do to close a sale for this type of person versus what to do to close a sale for that kind of person. And so you need to be able to do that. And by knowing this, you would gain the respect of the sales team, because the sales team might be able to go out there, close sales, talk to people, get in all the leads and do all of that. But you as a product marketer has a strategic ability to really connect dots. In my previous video, when I spoke about what product marketing does, I speak a lot about connecting dots, and that's a big part of what product marketing does, right? You have to be able to connect dots, and here that's what you're doing for the sales team. You're connecting the dots between why a deal didn't close versus why a deal is closing. What types of deals close in what types of ways versus what type of deal will close in another kind of way, because not all customers are the same. So if your sales team is struggling to close deals with enterprises, and they're closing deals perfectly well with startups, then you as a PMM would come in to say, why are we struggling to close deals with enterprises? What do they need that we're not able to give them? And then connect that dots. Do you want to speak to enterprise customers? Do you want to speak to some of them and understand like what they need that you're not able to give them, or you're not communicating, or the sales team is not communicating very well to them? And that's what happens with sales enablement. It's really a skill where you need to sit with sales, try to help them close as many deals as possible. And by the time you're able to master the skill and do it well, there's going to be a very strong sense of accomplishment that you feel as a PMM, because you realize how much your work impacts actual revenue. Unlike so many other skills that PMMs have, the skill PMMs need to have, this one is the one that is very close to revenue. And by doing it well, executing on it well, you're going to be able to see, oh, wow, by this research that I did, from talking to a bunch of customers, from understanding how to reposition ourselves to this sets of people, to this specific sets of people, we're able to generate XYZ amount in revenue. That does make you feel good as a PMM. So yeah, a very essential skill. Now another one, I think this is the fourth or fifth, I'm not sure, is customer onboarding and customer journeys. So the reason I'd say I'd call this a skill, you won't see it in a lot of like skill lists, is because I realized how important it is for a PMM to be able to understand that journey, from a customer seeing an ad to signing up to your product to doing the first thing, the second thing, until they've done everything that they ideally should do using that product. It is super important. And remember how I said customer engagement is a metric that product marketers have to track? It's true, because this is where you get to do it, right? If you do all that product launch work, you've done the positioning, you've done your research, you've found a way to compete, you understand the problem your customers have, then they download your product or they sign up to your product, and the journey is just up and down. It's terrible. They're not able to go from point A to point B as seamlessly as possible. All of that work becomes dead work. So in order to really complete that, in order to connect that dots, because that's what PMM does, you have to be able to understand that journey. You have to pay attention to it. And for this one, you have to work close with product managers, engineers, designers, right? How is the product designed? Do people understand it? Is it a design that they're familiar with for that kind of product? It's kind of like your typical banking app or your typical messaging app or emails. There's a way you expect an email product to look like. If you try to get a MailChimp, for example, and say, oh, this is an email marketing tool. There's a way you expect it to look like. You expect it to have a place where you can see all of the emails you've sent. You expect it to have a place where you can find your audiences and your contacts, for example. So in designing your product, it must meet this requirement. Of course, design knows this. What you're there to do as a PMM is make sure that there's nothing broken with the way that customers are expecting to experience your product versus the way your product is. So if they have expectations that it should be a certain way and it doesn't match those expectations, your product is already failing, and you already know customers are not patient, and they're going to probably start thinking, maybe this is not what I'm here for. I'm so confused. I need to check out of here, right? So the same way, if they are not able to easily get the job done, like get to the point where they see value, they probably will not be as excited with using your product. So you have to work with your product manager to say how fast, what can you do to get this customer to a place where they feel like, I really love this product. So, oh, this product makes sense. I want to try it again. Like, how fast can you get them there? You have to work with your product managers to put this together, and it has to be a process that you pay very close attention to. The skill here, though, is just learning how to connect the dots. So, learning how to understand, learning how to say, okay, when a customer sees my ad, I want them to do this. And then thinking to yourself, like, can they do it or can they not do it? If they see your ad and you want them to see your ad and go and sign up, then let them be able to do that flawlessly. They've signed up. When they sign up into the product, I want them to be able to add something. Maybe you want them to add a list of assets that they have, or you want them to add money to their wallet, for example. Then you have to do something to prompt them to do that, right? You can't just expect that when they land on your product, they're just going to intuitively know, let me add money, which is why you see a lot of products will start sending you pop-ups, emails, and stuff like that. So you have to be able to say, okay, I'm going to send this person an email or a pop-up or a push notification telling them to add money. And it's not just about telling them to add money. You have to be able to understand the psychology behind, okay, I've told them to add their money, but why would they add money? So what is the psychology behind getting them to actually do that thing? Do they need trust reinforcement? Do they need to learn how it works? Because maybe they don't even know how it works. So even if you just tell them, oh, go and add money, then they would be like, how do I do that? And you haven't thought about that. So it's really you thinking deeply about how to tell them what to do, and then driving that with a psychology behind, okay, now I've told them what to do. Why should they do it? Like, I've got to tell them why they should do it and how they should do it. So that's a process, that's a flow you want to be thinking of, which is why I love products that have product tours, especially ones that are flexible enough that as a customer I can always go back. Because in this day and age, sometimes people don't want to reach out to support and say, oh, I don't know how to do this, can you help me? So you should have some kind of way to educate your customer on how to use your product as soon as they sign up. You should also be able to motivate them, inspire them, or drive them to keep performing actions so you can build habits that will keep them coming back to your product over and over and over again until it just becomes a lifestyle. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for that skill. And another skill that I'll talk about would be product marketing reports, right? So this is kind of like reporting on your successes, reporting on things that you're doing. I know it's like, but it's a big skill. You need to be able to package your reports, present your reports in a very clear and concise manner. You need to be able to present this to management, leadership, stakeholders, everybody. So it's something you should be thinking of. If you're a product marketer in any company, always have a report ready for the things that you've done, because product marketing is not like sales. You're not going to get things like, oh, we're going to do 5 million, 500 million in revenue. It's a bit different with the way that it works, and there's a lot of collaboration that happens with product marketing. For the most part, you're not going to own so many things all by yourself. Even for product launches, while you're responsible for it and you're responsible for like all of that environment that goes into launching a product, you still have to collaborate a lot to get that to execution. And so you need to be able to report on where things are, what you're doing, why you're doing it. And this is the way that people have they get to understand your work, because unfortunately product marketing is still like, people still need a lot of understanding. And I intentionally added that to these skills because you really need to work hard on getting people in the company, getting all the stakeholders to understand the value and the impact of your work. Because if you don't, nobody would sing your praises, nobody would understand the impact that you bring. If you don't tell them how you conducted a win-loss analysis to understand why sales is losing some deals and winning some deals, which helped sales to now start winning those deals they used to lose in the past, nobody would know how much of an input you made there. So you need to be able to report in a clear and concise way, put together a nice looking document, present it in a strong way. Don't like, presentation is a big deal, right? So putting together a document is one thing. You should also be able to present it in a way that is clear and concise. And another skill I will speak about is research. So as a PMM, working product marketing, you're going to be doing a lot of research. That's going to be customer research, market research, competitors research. You're always just going to be researching something and learning something new. So you should get familiar with it. Don't be afraid of it. Research is not, I mean, it's tricky. Sometimes you're not going to find everything you're looking for. But the biggest tip that I will give with research is, don't be afraid of customers. Always talk to them directly. If you're stuck, if you don't know what to do, you feel like, oh, I'm trying to launch this product, or I'm trying to do this thing and I'm so confused, just reach out to someone. Reach out to someone that has the profile of the customer you're trying to target. If you're trying to target recruiters, then reach out to a recruiter on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on any social media channel you're comfortable with. Reach out to someone and say, oh, hi, I just wanted to talk to you about XYZ. You'd be surprised, sometimes they respond to you, sometimes they don't. You can do this personally on your own. You can do this as a like activity that your company sponsors. I personally do my own research myself, and I think it's advisable that you do, because it gives you a lot of confidence when you're out there in the company giving your advice to sales, to the business, to customer support, and saying, I don't think we want, even to products, and saying, I don't think we should work on that feature. I think we should prioritize this other feature. It's coming from a very solid place, because people are going to ask your advice. Once you begin to show that you make sense, right? People are going to start reaching out to you and saying, what do you think about this new feature we're trying to build out? And you'll be in a more confident position to say, that's not a good feature to build out. Let's focus on this other feature instead. Why? It's because you're not just saying it out of you're not just thinking people won't like it as much. It's because based on how much you've talked to these customers that they're trying to build for, you know that these customers prefer another feature. This gives you that confidence to make valid inputs, to talk in team meetings, and it's going to help you grow, I promise you. So be able to research also within the company. Don't only do your research externally. Talk to people within the company. You'd be shocked how much they know about the products, and you'll be shocked the kind of thoughts that they have that could really help you. So always look within the company, also talk to people about what they think about certain things, talk to them about how they see your products, and get feedback. It's really important. So I think this brings me to the end of hard skills. In my next video, we would cover soft skills. Thank you so much for watching my channel, and leave any questions that you have in the comments below. I know there's many other skills, but these are like the core skills for product marketing, well, at this time. And there's also being able to analyze data, look at data, and so many others. But just drop them in the comments if you have other ideas so that every other person can learn. Thank you, and see you in my next video.